Have the Georgia Bulldogs resurged from the depths of hell? Are they back? Do they really have a chance of winning a national championship after being left for dead twice this year? Looks like it. I'm Patriot Dylan. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any of the football, racing, politics, all the stuff that we do on here. Now, let's get down to business, shall we? The Georgia Bulldogs. My beloved Bulldogs. I love them so much, but they make me so angry, especially this year. However, Saturday night, I was elated to see that the Georgia Bulldogs finally looked good for 3 quarters. First quarter was a little rough, but Georgia came back to outscore Tennessee in the last 3 quarters, 31-7, giving them the 31-17 win. Now, the interesting the stat line here, and this is a key component here, but there is still a couple things missing that I would like to see out of Georgia to really cement them back in for the official running for a national championship contender. Like the media keeps saying that, oh, it's Georgia. So, Carson Beck, 25 of 40, 347 yards and 2 touchdowns. With a QBR of 98. Tremendous performance by Carson Beck. He finally found a rhythm. He finally got his footing. Stepped up in a big way Saturday night. However, you look at the rushing stats here. Nate Frazier, 19 carries, only 68 yards. About 3.5 yards per carry, which is okay. It's certainly acceptable. And as a team, 31 carries, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, with 3.4 yards per carry. Okay. I mean, the Carson Beck kind of inflates those stats a little bit with his rushes, but you take those 32 yards out and you're sitting at 70, about 80 yards rushing against a pretty good Tennessee defensive line. But again, this is Georgia. They are supposed to be rough, tough, physical, can run down anybody's throat. That clearly wasn't the case Saturday night. There's still something that feels a little off with Georgia. Like they're still missing that running game. Nate Frazier did a good job. No question. But he's not going to be able to carry that load, especially if you're able to get into the SEC championship game. You need more production from the running game. Carson Beck, he can be great, but you're not going to find a lot of quarterbacks that can just put it all on their shoulders. Running game ain't working. We need you. Carson Beck, I don't think is that guy. At least he hasn't shown it. We have yet to see Carson. We need you to go out and win this game. Now, to a degree, he did do it here, but Tennessee is Tennessee. We need it, and we are probably going to see if he can do it in the playoffs, especially if this running game continues. because it was Carson Beck who won this game on offense. That rush he had in I think it was the second quarter, just sparked it. And it sparked this onslaught that we saw, scoring 17 points in the second quarter. And then kind of softened up in the second half, only scoring 14. But yeah, good win by Georgia. On to the next one. Texas surviving against Arkansas. Now, 20-10 victory. That is way too close for what Texas is. They're a lot better than that. And the alarm bells have to be ringing. Quinn Ewers, 20 of 32, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. Okay. A good stat line. Good little stat line, but it's not what you expect out of the number 3 team in the country against Arkansas, who's sitting 3-3 in the conference, and they have lost to A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma State. I mean, you got out of there with a win. You got the most important thing out of the way. Got out with a win. But if Texas is going to go in to Kyle Stadium, or Kyle Field, I should say, and beat A&M, they're going to need a better performance than that. A&M has been foaming at the mouth for a decade on this. A little over a decade, I believe. I think it was 2012. A&M made the move to the SEC. They're going to, this game between Texas and Texas A&M, should they both go into this game with, I believe they're both sitting at one. A&M might be sitting at 2 losses. Yeah, 2 losses, 1 in the conference. So a trip to the SEC championship game is on the line if everything goes chalk. So I'm not ready to start panicking and oh my god, it's all coming to an end. Not quite there yet. But if they're gonna struggle against Arkansas, might need to revisit the game plan. And I still have serious questions about Steve Sarkisian coaching, especially when we get to the big moments. The game against Washington last year in the bowl game, that was too big of a moment for Texas. Earlier this year, Georgia, that moment was too big for Texas. Even at home, it was too big for Texas. So, we'll certainly find out in a few weeks whether the moment against Texas A&M is going to be too big for the Longhorns. Moving on, we had a legitimate upset scare. Oregon Ducks in Camp Randall to play the Badgers. They squeak out with a 16-13 win. Dylan Gabriel, not the greatest performance. 22 of 31, 218, and a pick. This was Big Ten football at its finest, quite frankly. Just got 2 rough, tough physical teams just throwing haymakers back and forth. I mean, Wisconsin led this game 13-6 at one point. And steadily. Now, one thing that has absolutely killed the Ducks in their in their bid for playoffs over the last number of years has been Dan Lanning's decision making. Late in that fourth quarter, to put the game away, they decided to do something I do not like. They tried that fake field goal. They're up 16-13. It is an easy chip shot field goal to put them up 6. That way, that eliminates the possibility of being forced into overtime and then after with a field goal. And after that, who knows what happens, especially in a defensive brawl like this game was. I get that. So there's a few different mindsets here that you can use to what Dan Lanning may have been thinking when making the call to do the fake field goal with under 2 minutes left, up by 3. And that is, A, I trust my defense to stop them if this doesn't go well, which they did. They got the pick by about 2 plays later. Or for whatever reason, you don't trust the defense to step up in this big moment. Which there's no reason why not to believe that they won't step up. Oregon's got one of the best defenses in the country. And they showed it here tonight. Or they showed it Saturday night. Say. Lockley, the Wisconsin quarterback, 12 of 28, 96 yards, touchdown and a pick. Wisconsin's going to continue being this mid-tier Big Ten team, now getting very lost in the shuffle with the new additions to the Big Ten, unless they find the quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke was supposed to be somebody to potentially level the playing field for Wisconsin and allow them to be that Cinderella story, but it hasn't worked out. They're now sitting at 5-5, 3-4 in the conference. This is year 2 under Fickell. We'll see if Wisconsin can get that quarterback in year 3 of the Fickell era, or otherwise that seat in Madison is going to start warming up. Now, from the near upset to the straight up upset, Florida getting it done in the swamp, dispatching of the LSU Tigers, and turning what could have been a dream season for LSU just a few weeks ago into a nightmare. I'm old enough to remember, because I'm older than 3 weeks old, LSU controlled their own destiny to go to the SEC championship game. And then they lost to A&M. And it has only spiraled out of control. I mean, 3 straight losses. You get beat fairly handily by Texas A&M, who I still question how good of a team they are. Alabama, you get annihilated at home in Death Valley. You get annihilated 42-13. That is what you expect from a lower upper like a mid-tier Big Ten team against a MAC team. You expect a 42-13. LSU Alabama, that is not something you expect. And now they have been dispatched once again by Florida, who has been just rattled with injuries. They are going through the merge row of schedules. And you lose to Florida. Brian Kelly may want to reconsider consider some options here, because LSU has a history of dispatching people who embarrass them on a weekly basis. And LSU has officially been embarrassed 3 times in 3 weeks. Now, I'm not saying Brian Kelly is going to get fired at the end of the year. That's not going to happen. But if this downward trend continues into next year, there's going to be some calling for some jobs. And LSU isn't like Notre Dame. They're not going to stick to their guy going 9-3 every year. Now, LSU's not even going to make it to 9-3. I don't even know if they're going to get. I'm not sure if they get to 7 wins, because they got Vanderbilt and Oklahoma left on the schedule. They should beat both. That remains to be seen, quite frankly. Then we have another upset. The upset special. Kansas goes into Brigham Young University and pulls off the upset. This game puts BYU in a situation now that they no longer have a safety net. They now need to win the Big 12 in order to get into the college football playoff. And their schedule is manageable. At Arizona State, and then home against Houston to end the season. But BYU is one of those teams that doesn't get that second safety net like a Georgia or Ohio State. Kind of like what I was saying last week with Indiana. They don't have that safety net to be able to back their way into the playoffs. They don't have that. BYU, they have to win a conference. They have to win the conference. And pretty much whoever ends up playing BYU in the Big 12 championship game, which I believe we are potentially going to see. We're going to see potentially Colorado and BYU. Neither team has a safety net here. You got to win the conference title. There's no other pathway for either BYU or Colorado. Colorado, they're hot. They are hot. So, moving on to Boise State. They are the last team in the highest ranking, the last of the ranking respective conference champions. They're the final piece of the puzzle. They were tied at halftime. Boise pulled away. Maddox Madison, 22 of 30, 286, and a touchdown. Serviceable day, and that's all you need when you have Ashton Gentry running the rock. 32 carries, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. I tell you what, with a running game that Boise State has, and as well coached as they appear to be, I've seen crazier things happen in college football than Boise playing a Cinderella story in a college football expanded playoff. Now, left on Boise State's schedule, I believe it's fairly smooth sailing. Yeah, Wyoming and Oregon State. So they are going to finish the season 11-1, and almost certainly going to be in the college football playoffs. Let's take a look here and see. They are in the Mountain West, so they'll be playing Colorado State, which see if they have not played, but Colorado State is not going to be good enough to beat Boise. I can tell you that right now. Now, this game I'm only mentioning because I find this incredibly annoying as a fan of college football. Georgia and Tennessee are going to be doing the same thing this upcoming weekend, but Alabama playing Mercer in late November. It's a joke. We are in the heart of the season. These are the dog days of August. Take a baseball reference. And they are playing Mercer. These games, and I hate these games so much from the SEC. And the SEC no longer has the whole we can't do that because it's too much of a strain on our players, yada 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 yada. Come on, we saw it in 2020. Not to mention, Alabama won the national championship that year. And they also had who I consider to be the best team to ever be assembled in college football in the 2020 Alabama Crimson Tide. And yes, I'm putting them over the 19 LSU Tigers. I'm putting them over the 22 Georgia Bulldogs. I am putting them over the 24 Michigan Wolverines, the 2001 Hurricanes, like you name it. The 2020 Alabama Crimson Tide, best team ever assembled in college football, especially when you consider the circumstances that we had to endure in 2020. But yeah, SEC needs a ninth game because this is ridiculous. You have Alabama and Mercer playing, and you have the SEC cupcake season. It's a joke, and just have a bye. Just have a bye. There's no need for this type of game to ever come about. And then we have the ugly Cinderella story. This isn't the pretty Jessica Simpson looking Cinderella. This is like the Gertrude looking, got like one big tooth in the middle and like a Olga style mole on the side of their face, like Lubert from iCarly. Like ugly. In Notre Dame, they dispatched Virginia 35-14. Now they do have a couple of interesting games left on the schedule. Obviously, they are still independent. They do not have a conference championship to fight for. They are just going for that at-large bid and having a home playoff game. Now, it's not going to be an easy road. They play Army this weekend, and then they go to Los Angeles to play USC. And if I'm not mistaken, so odds are USC will be at 6-5. They play UCLA this weekend, and UCLA is not good. But yeah, this is the last thing USC has to try to salvage this horrific season that they have endured. Now, with all that being said, and there'll be a prediction video coming out later this week on what I think is going to happen in the world of college football, which will probably be wrong because I'm very good at getting them wrong. So, gamblers, whatever I say, you might make some profit if you do the opposite. But nonetheless, now the AP poll was released, and well, as they say, it is unanimous. Oregon at the top of the AP poll, sitting at 11-1. They have Washington left. They are off this weekend. Which is kind of interesting that they have the bye so late in the season. But nonetheless, they are 11-1. They are one of 3 teams left that are undefeated. And Army is still not in. Oh, wait, there they are. They're sitting 18th. So they are one of 3 teams still unblemished in their record. Then number 2, you got Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. Alabama jumped up a couple spots. Georgia actually leapfrogs Ole Miss in the shuffle. Georgia jumps up to 8th. Ole Miss only jumps 1. That is interesting given what happened just a week ago. Georgia, like I love my dogs, but I have to be straight here. Ole Miss should be sitting at 8, and Georgia at 9. Now, the other team that dropped, as I expected, BYU. They're not a very popular team. It doesn't help that they're on the West Coast, and the AP does have a anti-West Coast bias for the most part. And they are going, outside USC. And they are taking the hit. And they're taking it pretty hard. They dropped to 14th. And Army, they dropped 2 spots. Why? Don't know. I honestly don't know. And then now this is gonna be an interesting one. Tulane is back into the top 25. So should Army pull off the upset this weekend? They'll have a win against number 8 ranked Notre Dame, and if they're able to go on and win the AAC, they'll have a victory over a top 25 Tulane. So that's huge to remember if you have to decide between Army or Boise State on who gets in. Now, another interesting scenario that could come here, which is very plausible. Boise State could also get in as an at-large bid should Clemson upset Miami. And that's by no means a far stretch at all. I think Miami and Clemson are fairly even. Now, I'm trying to map this out in my head. You'd have Oregon as a champ, Texas as a champ, Miami as a champion, and Boise as a champion. So you got 5. Got your 5 champions. Then Ohio State 6, Penn State 7, Indiana 8, Notre Dame 9, Alabama 10, Georgia 11, Ole Miss 12. So yeah, the only route for Boise is to win a conference title. Actually, hold on. All right. So, Oregon, Texas, Miami, Boise, BYU, or SMU, I should say, because they're in the Big 12 now. Those are your 5 conference champions. Then Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss. Okay. And Ole Miss is more than likely not. Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama are probably not going to have a loss throughout the rest of the regular season. And one of my biggest fears here is that a team gets punished for going to the conference championship game, because that's going to set a whole different incentive structure on whether you want to even go to the conference championship. So this is going to end up being an interesting headache that the college football playoff committee is going to have to hammer out over the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to be interested to see whether it is a punishment to lose your conference championship game while the teams behind you sat at home and watched. So it's going to be an interesting one. Hopefully, I am not overthinking this. But, you know what? College football. We get to overthink things. We get to come up with the wildest scenarios you could ever think of. Because it's college football. And anything can happen. I'm Patriot Dylan. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.